Assalamu alaikum. Today we're going to explore two crucial processes that keep our world balanced. And what are they? They are photosynthesis and respiration. And these processes are interconnected. And by understanding these processes, it really helps us to appreciate how plants and animals rely on each other. So let's start with photosynthesis. So what is photosynthesis? We discussed about photosynthesis in our previous lesson, and there were some sources that were required for the process of photosynthesis. So there were some sources. So let's discuss about the sources. Okay, so now you tell me, what was the first source that was required for the process of photosynthesis? Yes, what was the first source? Yes, so for the process of photosynthesis, we need sun. Why do we need sun? Because we need sunlight. We need sunlight. And why do we need sunlight? We need sunlight to perform the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so the first factor, okay, so the first source that was required is sun. It is sun. Okay, so what was the second source? What was the second source? What was the second source? Yes, it was water. It was water. And where do we get water from? As we get sunlight from the sun. So where do we get water from? We get water from the roots. So the water is taken up by the roots. Why do we need water? Why do we need water? We need water to perform the process of photosynthesis. So water is the second source. Water is the second source. Okay, so what was the third source? What was the third source? You know, yes. So the third source was chlorophyll. It was chlorophyll. And what is chlorophyll? What is chlorophyll? Chlorophyll is a green pigment. It is a green pigment. And what is the function of chlorophyll? Its function is to absorb or to capture sunlight. To absorb or capture sunlight. To absorb or capture sunlight. To absorb or capture sunlight. And why do we need it? We need it to perform the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so the foot was the last source that was required for the process of photosynthesis. Pause the video and tell me what was the last source that was required for the process of photosynthesis? Yes, it was the carbon dioxide. It was carbon dioxide. And where do we get carbon dioxide from? Where do we get carbon dioxide from? We get carbon dioxide from the air. From the air, or we can say from the atmosphere. It's same. We need carbon dioxide, which is our fourth source. And also the last one. Okay, so we need carbon dioxide, and where do we get it from? From the air or from the atmosphere. And why do we need it? We need it to perform photosynthesis. So let's revise. So there were some sources that were required for the process of photosynthesis, and we need sunlight. And where do we get it from? From the sun. Secondly, we need water. And where do we get it from? From the roots. And thirdly, we need chlorophyll. And what is chlorophyll? It is a green pigment. And what's its function? Its function is to absorb or capture sunlight. And what else? Lastly, we need carbon dioxide. And where do we get carbon dioxide from? From the air, from the atmosphere. And why do we need these all sources? We need them to perform the process of photosynthesis. What is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the process by which plants make their own food. By which plants make their food. Okay, so photosynthesis is the process by which plants make their food. And what do they need to make their own food? As every meal, every food required ingredients. So what are the ingredients that are needed for the plants to make their own food? They need sunlight. They need sunlight. Why? To turn carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil into glucose. So let's discuss the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so what is photosynthesis? We just discussed about photosynthesis. So let's just summarize it. So this is where plants take in water, nutrients, and carbon dioxide. So what do plants take in? So the plant take in water, nutrients, and carbon dioxide. They use this to make glucose. They use this to make glucose. And the byproduct of this process is that they release oxygen. So they use sunlight. They use sunlight to turn carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil into glucose. Okay, so we just learned about the process of photosynthesis. So now we will learn about atoms. Do you remember what are atoms? Well, atoms have different symbols to represent them, and these are listed on the periodic table of elements. They are listed on the periodic table of elements. And everything is made up of atoms. Everything is made up of atoms. And some key atoms in photosynthesis, in the process of photosynthesis, are oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. What are the sources of photosynthesis? We just learned about them. What were the sources of photosynthesis? Sunlight, then water, and chlorophyll, and lastly, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide. So all things are made up of atoms, and atoms have different symbols. They have different symbols to present them. And they are listed on the periodic table of elements. And some key atoms are also involved in photosynthesis that are oxygen. What is oxygen? Where is oxygen in the process of photosynthesis? Oxygen is the byproduct of photosynthesis. It is the byproduct of the process of photosynthesis. What is meant by byproduct of photosynthesis? It means that plants release oxygen. Plants release oxygen. Where do we get oxygen from? We get oxygen from the plants, only plants. And oxygen is an atom. Let's discuss about the definition of atoms. So atoms are the smallest particles that can exist. So atoms are the smallest particles that can exist. And two atoms, when two atoms join together, when two same atoms join together, same atoms join together, they make up an element. They make up an element. So there are some atoms that are involved in the process of photosynthesis: oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. So let's see. So two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. Repeat. Two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. How many hydrogen atoms? Two. How many hydrogen atoms? Two. And how many oxygen atoms? One. They make up dihydrogen monoxide. What is dihydrogen monoxide? Water. So how many atoms? Two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom make up dihydrogen monoxide. And what is dihydrogen monoxide? It is water. Okay, and water is involved in the process of photosynthesis. Where do we get water from? We get water from roots. We get water from roots. Okay, and how many hydrogen atoms are present in water? Two. And what about oxygen? One. And what do they make up? They make up dihydrogen monoxide, water. Okay, and what else? We have one carbon and two oxygen molecules, which make up carbon dioxide. In the process of photosynthesis, we also require carbon dioxide. And where do we get it from? From the air, from the atmosphere. And let's see how many atoms are there. In total, we have one, two, three atoms. One of carbon and two of oxygen. And they make up carbon dioxide. So H2O chemically represent water and CO2 chemically represent carbon dioxide. And these combination and how they can be broken apart and put back as atoms can be combined and broken apart again are important to understand in the next part of the process. So all the things are made up of atoms and they are the smallest smallest particles that exist, and they are listed on the periodic table of elements. You must have read about atoms in chemistry. So atoms have different symbols to represent them and they're listed on the periodic table of elements. And some of the atoms are also involved in the process of photosynthesis: oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. How we have water, and water is made up of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. And we also require carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is made up of 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen. And it makes up carbon dioxide. So let's move on. Okay, so let's summarize the process of photosynthesis. We need sunlight. We need sunlight. And what is the role of sunlight in the process of photosynthesis? What is the role of sunlight in the process of photosynthesis? It provides energy. So sunlight provides energy. And it provides energy. Why it provides energy? Why energy is required? It is required because of this energy, we break down these molecules to their basic atoms. We just discussed about atoms and molecules. So carbon dioxide and water. And water. So these molecules are separated by the energy that is required by sunlight. How? Because of the energy of sunlight. Because of the energy provided by the sunlight, the elements in the atoms in carbon dioxide, how many atoms were there? There was 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. So, and what about water? There were 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom and 1 oxygen atom. And how can we chemically write or chemically show that this is water and this is carbon dioxide? We can show it by writing this like this: H2O. H2O. H2O means there are 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. And when they are combined, they make up water. And what about carbon dioxide? We can show it CO2. It means 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. Okay, so the role of sunlight in the process of photosynthesis is to provide energy. And what happens? Why do we need energy? The energy is required to separate these carbon dioxide and water molecules to their basic atoms, carbon atom, oxygen atom, to break down into their atoms. And what were the inputs of plants? They take in carbon dioxide and they take in water. So let's move on and learn further why we need energy from the sunlight, why we need the basic atoms, why we have to break down the molecules into atoms. Okay, so this is the chemical process of photosynthesis. Now we are going to learn about the chemical process of photosynthesis. Okay, so we just learned that plants take in carbon dioxide. Plants take in carbon dioxide from where? Through leaves. And where do we get carbon dioxide from? From the air. We get carbon dioxide from the air. And you have to remember that chemically it is written as CO2. It is written as CO2. It is written as CO2. And then what was the another input of plants? It was the water. It was water. So plants take in water from where? Through roots. And remember, this is H2O. Water is chemically written as H2O. It is chemically written as H2O. This represents there is 1 carbon atom and there are 2 oxygen atoms, and there are 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. Okay, so how this chemical process of photosynthesis takes place. So now the heat of the sun separates these molecules into separate hydrogen, into separate hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon atoms. So we just learned that sunlight, for the process of photosynthesis, we require sunlight. And where do we get sunlight from? We get it from the sun. And why do we need sunlight from? And why do we need sunlight? It provides us with energy. And why do we need energy? We need energy to break down these molecules into separate atoms, hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon atoms. We discussed it before. So now let's learn, why do we need these atoms? Why do we need these molecules to be broken down into atoms? So the C and H means carbon and hydrogen. These are the symbols that show carbon and hydrogen. Carbon and hydrogen. So these atoms, when we break down these molecules of carbon dioxide and water into atoms, so these atoms combine to form glucose. These atoms combine to form glucose. Repeat. Why do we need to break down these molecules into separate hydrogen, oxygen, carbon atoms? Because the C and H, the carbon and hydrogen, when combined, they form glucose. Okay, and what is glucose? What is glucose? We discussed it before, that it is a type of sugar that plants use as food. That plants use as food. So let's recall. Plants take in carbon dioxide through leaves. And what is it? Remember, it is CO2. We represent carbon dioxide chemically as CO2. Okay, and what else do plants take in? Plants take in water through roots. And remember, we can show water chemically. We can represent water chemically by showing this H2O. Means two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom when combined make up water. Okay, then we need sunlight. We learned about it, that sunlight is the source that is required for the process of photosynthesis. So we need sunlight. Why? Because we need to separate these molecules of water, of carbon dioxide, into separate hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon atoms. So into single hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon atoms. Why? Because carbon and hydrogen combine together to form glucose. And why they combine together to form glucose? Because plants make their food. This is the process of photosynthesis, the process by which plants make their own food. So they make glucose and they use it as their food. Okay. So glucose can also be stored as starch. Glucose can also be stored as starch. How can we remember it easily? When carbon and hydrogen, when combined together, make up glucose. So carbon and hydrogen, CH. At the end of the starch, we have CH. So you can remember by the first letters of carbon and hydrogen that we store it as starch. And what is a starch? Starch is a form of carbohydrate. It is the chief form of carbohydrate which is stored as energy in plants. Like rice, potatoes, wheat. These are all carbohydrates. Okay, so most oxygen is released back into the atmosphere and some is used for respiration. Plants release oxygen in their process of photosynthesis, and we need oxygen to breathe. And we get oxygen. Most oxygen is released back into the atmosphere so we can breathe. But some of the oxygen is used for respiration. And what is respiration? We will learn about respiration. Let's move on. Okay, so let's summarize the process of photosynthesis. So finally, let's write the inputs and outputs of photosynthesis. So carbon dioxide and water, they are the input of photosynthesis. These are the inputs of photosynthesis. So carbon dioxide plus water using chlorophyll, using sunlight, makes up glucose and oxygen. They make up glucose and oxygen. So the process of photosynthesis is when plants take in carbon dioxide and water and using sunlight, energy, and chlorophyll, they convert it into glucose and oxygen. What is photosynthesis? It is the process by which plants make their own food. So now let's finish this photosynthesis and learn about respiration. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a fascinating process that happens in plants called respiration. Called respiration. And what is respiration? Just like humans and animals, plants need energy to grow, reproduce, and survive. Animals, humans need energy to grow. Just like animals and humans need energy, means food need energy to grow, to survive. Plants also need energy. Why? To grow, to reproduce, and to survive. But how do they get this energy? How do they get this energy? Let's find out. So, respiration is a process that occurs in all living cells. Firstly, you need to know that respiration is a process which occurs in all living cells. In all living cells, including those in plants. In plants. So respiration occurs in all living cells, including those in plants. And respiration is how plants convert their food, the food they make, into energy. As we learned before, plants make their own food. How? By the process of photosynthesis. So they use the process of respiration to convert the food they made into energy. And this is a bit different from photosynthesis, where plants make food using sunlight, but it's time to convert this food into energy. So here is a diagram of a plant. And in respiration, plants use oxygen. As we learned in the process of photosynthesis, that plants produce glucose. Plants produce glucose, which is a type of sugar during the process of photosynthesis. So, in the process of respiration, plants use oxygen. What? They use oxygen to break down glucose. So in respiration, plants use oxygen. To break down glucose. What is the glucose? Glucose is a type of sugar. It is a type of sugar. So in the process of respiration, plants use oxygen break down glucose. So plants break down glucose using the oxygen. They break down glucose using oxygen into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So the glucose that is produced by plants during the process of photosynthesis, plants break down this glucose using oxygen in the process of respiration into glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide, same as CO2. And what else? So glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide, then it is also broken down into water, and it is broken down into energy. So the glucose produced by plants in the process of photosynthesis is broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy by the help of oxygen in the process of respiration. And this process happens in the part of the cell called mitochondria. It is called mitochondria. and it is often referred to as the powerhouse of the cell. Powerhouse of the cell. It is a part of plant cell and it is present in the plant. So let's see, how does plant respiration work? How does plant respiration work? Let's break it down by step. The first step is the breakdown of glucose and how first plants create glucose during photosynthesis. So plants create glucose, how? During the process of photosynthesis. Then what happens? Then during respiration, this glucose is broken down. This glucose is broken down. How? During the process of respiration. So first plants make this glucose during the process of photosynthesis, and in the process of respiration, the same glucose is broken down. Okay, and what is the second step? Involvement of oxygen. So it is the involvement of oxygen. How? Oxygen, where do we get oxygen from? Oxygen from the air. So oxygen from the air enters the plant through tiny openings called stomata. We learned about stomata before. They're the tiny openings. And guard cells care about the opening of stomata. So oxygen from the air enters to the plants through the openings called stomata. And it combines with glucose to start the breakdown process. Then what happens? Oxygen combines with glucose. Oxygen combines with glucose. It combines with glucose to start the breakdown process. Oxygen combined with glucose to start the breakdown process. And then what happens at the third part? At third stage, energy is released. So when glucose is broken down by the involvement of oxygen, so the breakdown of glucose releases energy. Breakdown of glucose release energy. So breakdown of glucose release energy. Which energy? That the plant uses to grow and carry out various functions. This energy is the energy that the plant uses to grow and carry out various functions. And carbon dioxide and water are also produced as byproducts and released back into the atmosphere. So what are the byproducts of this process? The byproducts of this process are carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide and water. So why respiration is important for plants? Now you tell me why respiration is important for plants. Because it provides the energy. Which energy? The energy by which plants grow, by which plants perform various functions. So this energy, so basically through the process of respiration, energy is released, which energy by which plants grow, plants survive, and grow and develop new leaves, new flowers, and roots. And repair damaged tissues, absorb nutrients from the soil, adapt to changing environments. Let's discuss the benefits of this process. Okay, so respiration, let's revise. Food contains potential energy, and this energy needs to be released in a series of chemical reactions, and this process is called respiration. So let's look at the process of respiration. Glucose plus oxygen is the byproducts are energy, carbon dioxide, and water. And respiration occurs when the energy in glucose and starches are unlocked and used for life processes like growth. So respiration occurs when the energy in the glucose and starches are unlocked and used for life processes like growth. So why respiration is crucial for plants? What do you think why respiration is crucial for plants? Because it provides the energy. It provides the energy, which energy? To grow and develop roots, to grow, develop new leaves, flowers, and what else? And roots. So respiration is crucial for plants because it provides energy. Which energy? They need to grow and develop new leaves, flowers, and roots. And what else? Repair new tissues, repair damaged tissues. And what else? Absorb nutrients from the soil. Absorb nutrients from the soil. Absorb nutrients from the soil. And what else? To adapt to changing environments. Adapt to changing environments. So why respiration? Why the process of respiration is crucial for plants? Because through the process of respiration, plants get energy. Which energy? The energy they need to grow and develop new leaves, new flowers, and roots. And what else? To repair damaged tissues, absorb nutrients from the soil, and also adapt to changing environments. So without respiration, plants wouldn't have the energy to perform these vital functions. Let's compare photosynthesis and respiration. While they are related, let's see how. In photosynthesis, what were the sources? We use carbon dioxide. We use carbon dioxide, right? And we used water. And what else? We used sunlight. We used sunlight. So these were the inputs for the process of photosynthesis. Okay, and what were the outputs in the process of photosynthesis? In the process of photosynthesis, glucose and oxygen was released. In the process of photosynthesis, glucose and oxygen was released. So these were the outputs. These were the outputs for the process of photosynthesis. And as we need sunlight, so this process can only happen during the day when sunlight is available. Yes? Why? Because sunlight is required for the process of photosynthesis. So this process happens during the day. This process happens during the day when sunlight is available. Okay, so now let's talk about respiration. So what were the inputs of respiration? So in the process of respiration, we use glucose. And what else? We used oxygen to break down the glucose. So the inputs were glucose and oxygen. So the inputs were glucose and oxygen. And what were the outputs? What were the byproducts of the process of respiration? It produces carbon dioxide. We just discussed that it produces carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So these were the outputs of which process? Respiration. Okay. And when can this process happen? Can it happen only at daytime? No, it can happen all the time. This process can happen all the time. How all the time? Day and night. Why? Because in this process, we don't need sunlight. Yes, we don't need sunlight. And in the process of photosynthesis, glucose is already released. So what we need is oxygen. And oxygen can also be provided by plants at night. So as you can see, the oxygen produced during photosynthesis, is used in respiration, and the carbon dioxide produced using respiration, the carbon dioxide produced during respiration is used in photosynthesis. Is used in photosynthesis. So it's a continuous cycle. So today we learned about the essential process of respiration in plants and how it differs from photosynthesis. Remember, even though plants don't breathe like us, but they still need oxygen and energy to survive and thrive. So keep observing plants around you and think about all the amazing processes happening within them. So happening within them. I hope you understand about photosynthesis and respiration. Jazakillah khair.